here's a fun little painting for you kids, but grown-ups could do it too. It's going to be a little paint palette with a brush. And I will download the stencil of the pattern that you can print off. It should be linked right below the video. And once you get it drawn on, you're going to come back and you're going to draw a shadow on. So you're going to have the basic shape, but then we want it to have some depth. So inside that circle, you're going to have a second line. So you've got your bigger circle. You see that? We're going to kind of just put a second line right at the top like that. Then we're going to come on this bottom edge and we're going to make the shadow or the depth there. And then we're going to come again here. I already have it drawn on, but I'm just doing it a little bit darker for you. We're going to do it there. And you can put your brush any direction you want. I've just kind of angled mine that way. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this palette. We're going to make it look wood grained. So I'm going to use just a 1/2 inch square brush. I'm going to use some burnt umber and a little bit of white paint and maybe a touch of this yellow ochre. So I'm going to get my brush wet. I'm going to start with some white. I'm going to mix myself a little bit of a light brown. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the white and the brown, and it is going to need some of that yellow ochre in there. Maybe even a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of water because I don't want this real thick. I want it kind of thin. And I'm just going to start painting the background of the palette. Paint right around that circle. You see how I'm using the wide side of the brush? Covers a lot of territory all at once. We'll come back and put a little bit of grain on it, but right now we just want to cover the surface with this tan color that I've made. A bit of dried paint in there. Must have been on my palette. And I think I'm going to have to make a little bit more. That was just not quite enough. For some reason, these little canvases that I'm using are very absorbent. They kind of suck up that first layer of paint. Even though they're already gessoed, they probably could use a coat of white paint before you start. So if you have a canvas that just feels sticky and your paint's not spreading well, you may want to put a coat of white paint on first, let it dry, and then go over it. Or you can get something called gesso. It's Gesso, and that is like a paint that preps the canvas and lets your paint that you put over it go on smoother, and it also helps it last a long time. Sometimes I order canvases and they're real rough. You can really feel the texture of the canvas, and I don't like that for most of my paintings. I don't want all that texture on there. So those are good ones to go ahead and gesso. It doesn't take long to dry, and then you can paint right over it. Okay, we got just this little section here that you hold on to. If you've ever used one of these, your thumb goes up in that hole and you hold like this. It's backwards because I'd be holding the other way, but okay, so I've got that color on. Now I'm just going to take the long side of my brush. I'm going to dip it in, and I'm going to put just a few little lines on here. We're going to make those into wood grain. I think I'll pick that up on both sides of the paintbrush. One there. Okay, now I'm just going to wipe my paintbrush off on my paper towel. I don't know if you can see that. So, and then I'm just going to come back over those just to kind of brush them out a little bit and give it just a little bit of a grainy look. I may want to put a few little swishy ones in there. Okay, now let me pull those. Okay, I'm going to switch to a round brush now. Okay, so now I'm just switching to a round brush, and I'm going to take some of the burnt umber, and I'm just going to come where that shadow is, the inside. So now we have perspective on this. So it's going to start a little skinny there. It's going to end a little skinny because it would fade away. Then we're going to do the same thing under here. It's going to start thin. I'll try to get my hand out of the way. I'll pick up on this side of the brush. And we're going to end thin. So we're going to push harder. And then as I want it to narrow off, I'm lifting my brush up slowly until it just picks right up off the canvas like that. Okay, now what color should we do that paintbrush? I'm thinking I might want that handle of that paintbrush to be red. Something bright. So I'm just using a little cadmium red. I'm going to use that same brush that I've rinsed out, the round brush that I was using. load that up, and I'm going to start with the point of the handle, and I'm going to lay the point of my brush down, and then I'm just going to pull it up, allowing it to get a little bit wider in the middle, and then we want it to just taper in a bit, so a little bit wider in the middle, and then in, and then I'm just going to come up here. Nothing to that. So we got the brush. Now I'm going to grab some silver paint because I do have metallic silver somewhere. Oh. See, I have a little bit of metallic silver, and I'm going to use that for the ferrule of the brush. I'm not going to do my bristles yet. Now you could leave the outside white, or you could paint it black. This is kind of the fun part now, is I'm actually going to squirt with my little tube acrylics. I'm going to just squirt on. I'm going to try to hold it maybe so you can see it a little bit better. A dot of acrylic. And I'm not going to smooth it out. So I've got yellow. I'm just kind of going to go through the colors of the rainbow here. We'll do a little bit of orange. Oh, I got a little orange on the edge there. Let me just see if I can get that off real quick. If you get it before it dries, you can usually wipe it right off. So then what's the next color of our rainbow? It would be red. I'm just kind of trying to evenly space them. Then we would have, I'm going to use magenta instead of my purple. If you look, my purple's pretty dark, and I think I'd rather have this magenta, which is in the purple family. Which, what is purple? It's red and blue mixed. Get some magenta. Then I'm going to use a primary cayenne, which is this color blue. And last, we're going to put some green on. Now, which green do I want? I have a couple here to choose from. I think I want the cadmium green. Okay, now, what color do you want to paint your brush? I think I'm going to let my bristle part of my brush be white. So I'm going to paint some white out here. And then I want some color on my brush so it looks like I've been painting. And what would be really fun is if the colors kind of look like a rainbow right on my brush. So I'm going to try this by just dipping my brush a little bit in these colors. And I think I will go the opposite way. So I'm just going to do a little yellow. I'm going to rinse in between each one. Now I'm going to take a little dip of orange. We'll do some red. I don't want them to all start in the same place, so I'm going to start this one shorter. And some magenta. And a little bit of blue. And last but not least, a little bit of green. And that is a pretty funky paintbrush. Now I'm going to take my black. I'm going to take just the very tip of my brush, and you can use a smaller brush if you want. I'm going to put a couple little lines on my paintbrush like that. And then, just to show you, I think I will do the outside in black. But you can leave it white. You could paint it another color. But I like the idea of the black. I think it's going to make this just pop right off the canvas. Mine's an 8x8 canvas, but you could use whatever size you want. If you use a bigger canvas, when you print the template that I will have uploaded with this, you just need to make it bigger. So you print it and then enlarge it. And most printers have that option to go back in on a copy setting and enlarge. You can just make it big enough to fit whatever size canvas you're painting on. And if you don't have a canvas, you can do this same thing on paper. Probably aren't going to have big clumps of paint like that, piles of paint, but you can do it by just making dots of paint. I'm using a big brush because I just want to get through this fast so the video doesn't take too long. But you could use a smaller brush, especially going around in the detail. I actually am going to have to switch to a smaller brush to get in that little thumb area. Just switching to my smaller square brush, my 1/2 inch square. It's got a little bit too much water on it. Just paint inside that circle. I'm going to turn my canvas because I think it's easier. There's just certain directions that I paint that are easier for me, and that's something you should practice. Finding what is your most comfortable way to hold your hand, and then you can turn your canvas as opposed to having to turn your hand in an awkward direction. Do you like to sit or do you like to stand when you paint? When I teach my classes, I stand, but when I paint for myself, I usually sit. Okay, that is pretty awesome. I will go back and do my edges all in black, but you could do something fun with those too. You could do those rainbow colored. And then I'm going to sign my name, and I think I'm going to sign my name in white so it really pops out on that black. Now it's going to take that paint a little while to dry, probably a day, maybe two. Put my initials down here in the corner. And the year. There we go. I think as I'm looking at it, I think I might want to add a couple little white highlights where light would reflect. So I'm going to come on this top edge and I'm just going to put a little white on there. Add a little black still in there. Like that. And I think I'll put a little bit above this thumb. Maybe a little bit there. And then, how about right down that paintbrush edge just a little bit. A little on that. So, okay, you see what I just did? Got some black on there. But while it's still wet, I'm just going to take a clean dry brush, or clean wet brush, and just go over that paint and lift it up. So I'm lifting it up, wiping it on my paper towel. There we go. Don't know how I splattered that black paint all over, but that's why it's going to take a little bit more work getting it up. But there we go. And that is our finished painting. Enjoy and share your posts with me. I love to see what you paint. Thanks for joining me.